Imagine a scene of utter stillness, a flat line on a monitor, no pulse, no breath. Time drags on, minutes turning into hours. Loved ones gather, beginning to divide personal belongings and plan a funeral. 42 silent hours pass with no sign of life. Then, suddenly, a blinding light pierces the darkness. A moonlit orchard appears, 2 radiant guardians stand by, and visions of 7 hells and 5 celestial mansions unfold, where love reigns as the only law. It sounds like something out of a dream or a story, almost impossible to believe. Yet the most astonishing part is still to come. This isn't a work of fiction. It's the real-life account of Dr. George Debenville, a man from 18th century Germany, whose 42-hour journey through death might just change everything we think we know about the afterlife. George Debenville was a man who never quite fit into the world he was born into. He came from French nobility and was raised in the British royal court, later training as a physician. But he turned his back on privilege and luxury, choosing instead a life of service. He traded fine clothes for bandaged hands and royal halls for countryside preaching. By the time he reached his mid-30s, George was deep in rural Germany, dedicating his life to treating the sick and spreading a message of hope. It was there, in that humble setting, that something extraordinary happened. One night, overcome by a severe fever, George collapsed. Local witnesses confirmed the tragic news. At midnight, he stopped breathing. His heart ceased to beat. They declared him dead and began preparations for his burial. But 42 hours later, against all odds, George Debenville returned to life. What shocked people even more than his return wasn't just the fact that he came back. It was the story he brought with him. What George saw, heard, and learned during those 42 hours was beyond anything anyone could have imagined. In this account, we'll walk through his incredible journey into realms of darkness and light, exploring hells, heavens, and everything in between. To make sense of his experience, we'll also compare it to the detailed spiritual writings of Emanuel Swedenborg, a thinker who documented the afterlife with striking similarity. What does it mean when 2 men, separated by time, describe the same otherworldly reality? Let's dive into this mystery and uncover the truth together. It was midnight when George Debenville's body lay lifeless, with no breath and no heartbeat. Yet, according to his own words, his death wasn't sudden or complete. He described it as a gradual process, a slow separation from his physical form. George later wrote that he felt himself rising, observing from above as people gathered around his body below. He wasn't gripped by panic, nor was he entirely at peace. He was simply aware, detached. He felt a desire to turn away from the lifeless shell beneath him, and then something unseen pulled him upward. In his own account, George described being drawn up as if carried by a cloud, witnessing great wonders along the way, sights so incredible that words could never fully capture them. This idea of a gradual transition isn't unique to George's story. Emanuel Swedenborg, a spiritual writer from the same era, described a similar process. Swedenborg wrote that when the body grows cold, the living essence of a person is gently separated, no matter where it resides within. He believed that a divine mercy ensures no part of a person's spirit is left behind. It's not a random event or a mere chemical reaction. Something, or someone, guides the spirit free, ensuring every piece of who you are moves on to the next realm. George wasn't alone for long after the separation. 2 radiant beings appeared, one on each side of him. Their light was so intense it overwhelmed him. Their faces impossible to describe in human terms, and the love they radiated was even more indescribable. George felt this love pierce through every part of his being, filling him with a warmth and connection he had never known. These beings called him brother, a term of deep kinship. They weren't there just to welcome him. They had a purpose. They were there to guide George and show him how divine forces work to save every soul, beginning with a journey into the darkest of places, hell itself. Who were these mysterious figures? George referred to them as angels, and Swedenborg's writings support this idea. Swedenborg claimed that every person is accompanied by at least 2 spirits and 2 angels throughout their life, whether they're aware of it or not. The spirits connect a person to the world of other spirits, while the angels provide a link to heaven. These unseen companions are always present, whether welcomed or not, guiding and protecting in ways we may never fully understand. The guardians told George to brace himself, to have courage, because they were about to show him how the divine deals with evil. This meant taking him to a place few ever return from, a descent into darkness. Instead of leading him toward light and peace, they guided him straight into the depths of torment. George described passing through 7 habitations of the damned realms filled with screams, weeping, and anguish. He saw souls twisted by their own hatred, suffering in prisons of their own making, shaped by choices rooted in revenge, envy, lust, and greed. Each sin crafted its own unique form of torment, a personal hell for those trapped within. Among these tormented souls, George recognized someone he once knew. That person was still conscious, still trapped in their suffering. George felt a deep urge to reach out, to help, but he couldn't. An invisible barrier, a vast gulf, separated them. Swedenborg explains this separation as more than just a metaphor. It's a spiritual reality. He wrote that the anguish in such places, often described as the gnashing of teeth, represents the constant clash of false beliefs mixed with contempt, hostility, and mockery. The lamentation reflects the state of their inner evil, while the conflict of falsity adds to their pain. Hell, in this view, isn't a place someone is cast into by force. It's a state a person spirals into, one wrong belief at a time, until truth itself becomes a source of torment. George felt profound sorrow and grief as he witnessed these scenes, but he didn't fall into despair. His guardians had prepared him, urging him to hold on to courage, because the journey wasn't over. There was more to see, more to understand. Just when the horror seemed unbearable, a shift occurred. A new presence entered the darkness, changing everything. George saw a vast multitude of angels, and at their center was a figure radiating light, Jesus Christ himself. As they moved through the hells, the screams fell silent. George watched in awe as souls were lifted up, freed from their torment. This wasn't a scene of judgment or punishment. It was a rescue, a moment of divine compassion. Swedenborg's writings align with this vision. He described white robes as a symbol of divine truth surrounding a person in the presence of the Lord. When enveloped by this truth, no evil spirit can touch or harm them. It's a protection that shields even against one's own inner darkness. From this point, George's journey took a turn toward the light. His guardians led him upward, away from the darkness, and into a series of 5 celestial mansions, each more radiant and beautiful than the last. The people there wore garments whiter than snow, their bodies shimmering like glass, every movement filled with pure love. Swedenborg mirrored this description, writing that divine love seeks only one thing: for everyone to be saved and to live in profound, complete happiness. These heavenly realms weren't about earning a reward or achieving a higher rank. They were about how much light and love a soul was willing to accept. Then came the message that would define the rest of George's life. His guardians told him, "Go back. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that no one is beyond saving." Swedenborg echoed this sentiment, stating that the divine essence is pure love, working tirelessly with everyone in the world, even those in hell, to lead them out of darkness and lead them out of dark into salvation. 42 hours after his last breath, George Debenville sat up in his coffin, alive once more, and began to speak of what he had witnessed. George didn't return to a life of rest or quiet reflection. He came back with a mission, a purpose given to him by the angels. They instructed him to return to the world and preach what he called the universal everlasting gospel, the message that God holds a pure universal love for all of humanity, for every single person without exception. Though some religious teachings throughout history have contradicted this idea, Swedenborg, based on his own spiritual experiences, affirmed the same truth. He wrote that God could never turn away from anyone or even look upon them with disapproval. To do so would go against the very essence of the divine, which is love itself. This isn't a theology rooted in fear or punishment. It's a mission of rescue, one that never ceases. Inspired by this vision, George Debenville dedicated the rest of his life to embodying this love. He built a home in Pennsylvania, where he continued to treat the sick, educate children, and welcome people of all faiths. Every action he took was grounded in the belief that no one is disposable, that every person matters. Swedenborg supported this idea, writing that love for the divine and charity toward others are the core of all true theology and worship. In such a world, we would look at one another and say, "You are my kin. I see that you honor the divine and that you are a good person." What did George Debenville witness during those 42 hours? He saw a hell created by human choices, a heaven governed by boundless love, and one unshakable truth: everyone is being called home. It doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't look the same for everyone, but no one is ever written off or forgotten. George saw this reality with his own eyes, and when he returned, he lived as if it mattered deeply. He poured his life into serving others, spreading the message of universal love and salvation. Now, as we reflect on his story, it's our turn to consider what it means for us. How can we live in a way that reflects this truth? How can we act with the same courage and compassion that George showed after his return? George Debenville's experience challenges us to think beyond the boundaries of life and death, to see the world through the lens of divine love. His journey through darkness and light, guided by radiant beings, revealed a reality where rescue and redemption are always possible. By comparing his account to the detailed writings of Emanuel Swedenborg, we find striking parallels that suggest a deeper truth about the afterlife. It's a truth that offers not just comfort, but a call to action, to live with purpose, to treat others with kindness, and to trust that no one is beyond hope. George lived this truth every day after his return, and his story invites us to do the same.